Thank you for joining Bright Horizons today for the second Family Matters webinar of the year. My name is Ruth Savino, and I'm the Family Matters moderator. And today we're talking about school readiness, and we're so excited that you've joined us. We have a good mix of people with us today. Some of you have children in preschool or pre-kindergarten. We also have parents with infants and toddlers who want to get a jump start. So welcome to all of you. You're going to learn a lot today and hopefully have fun exchanging tips and ideas with fellow parents and friends of Bright Horizons. We have great news today for those of you that are attending live. You are automatically entered into a drawing to win a set of Bright Horizons Growing Readers Books of Excellence that will be selected to match the age of your child. Along with the books, you'll get a set of our Ready for School activity cards that show you easy learning activities to weave into your daily life with child. And as a really special bonus book, you'll get a copy of When You Just Have to Roar, and it's written by our guest speaker today, Rachel Robertson. Couple of quick housekeeping notes before we jump right in, just so that you understand what you're looking at there on the screen. Near the bottom of the screen, you'll find a menu of widgets you can use to interact with each other and the content, and we want you to use them. So we have Bright Horizons bloggers live tweeting with the hashtag BHWebinar, and you can certainly follow along or tweet with them by tweeting at Bright Horizons with the blue Twitter widget down on the bottom there. You can download a really great webinar resource pack with the green folder button. It has lots of links to related blogs and articles and videos, and you can click on that link at any time and get those resources. The brown chat button opens the live chat room, and we'd love to have you join the conversation with there to talk with us and with each other. And there are some folks from Bright Horizons in there as well, our family room bloggers. If you have not already joined in that, please click on that brown button now. And you can start by answering this question. What concerns do you have about your child's school readiness? We'll start with that chat question. And if you need any technical help today, please use the red button labeled Q&A and just use that for technical needs. And if you want to ask questions of Rachel or I, use the live chat. All right, well, let's get started. We've got three humongous topics for today. First, we're going to talk about what it means to be ready for school. And then we'll look at real classroom situations to learn more about the characteristics or indicators of school readiness and how early education experiences really help prepare children to be ready for school and a life of learning. And finally, we'll talk about your role, the family's role in school readiness, and we'll share some easy activities that you can do when you're with your child. So I'm really pleased to be joined today by Rachel Robertson. She is the Vice President of Learning and Development at Bright Horizons. Rachel's been a part of Bright Horizons for 4 years, and she's responsible for training and preparing Bright Horizons early education leaders and teachers across the country in a variety of key areas, including how teachers can prepare Bright Horizons children to be ready for school. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Bruce, and thanks to all of you for being here today to discuss school readiness with us.
So, Rachel, school readiness is a hot topic in the chat room already. There are a lot of things that parents have listed, some concerns that they've listed. How far along in reading and math do they need to be? Is he prepared and mature enough for kindergarten? Are they going to fall behind? Lots of concerns.
Yes, school readiness is absolutely a significant focus for parents and educators. At Bright Horizons, and really even in my personal life, this is a topic so many parents are discussing and ask me about all the time.
It is a hot one. So let's start out by exploring the question then, what is school readiness? So during the registration process, people asked about characteristics they could look for in their children that would indicate that a child is ready for school. They asked things like, What are some of the qualities of kindergarten readiness, and how do you know if your child will be successful in kindergarten? So I'm going to give everyone another chat question before we move on. From what you currently know and totally from your own perspective, share a couple of things that you think your child should be able to do before going to school. So in the chat, a couple of things you think your child should be able to do before going to school. Well, there's lots of variety in the chat, Rachel. Lots of academic answers and some more about personal or social skills like listening in a group, following directions. Bright Horizons regularly does a kindergarten readiness study where we ask parents this same question: what should children be able to do before they go to kindergarten? Can you give us a summary of what that study says, Rachel?
Yeah, there are several main areas that parents typically feel are important and talk a lot about in the study results. Things like knowing letters and numbers, expressing creativity, understanding and following classroom rules or guidelines, having confidence and emotional intelligence, a real curiosity about life and learning. And parents are also always talking about helping their kids develop self-sufficiency and independence. And all of these things are really parts of a solid start to defining school readiness. These parent perceptions are really great, definitely accurate and in line with what it could mean or part of what it means to be school ready.
Okay, yeah, boy, there's lots of things in that chat box. How to introduce a child to a whole new group. I mean, that self-sufficiency and emotional intelligence, all those things. So that really is school readiness from the average parent's perspective. Let's look at the flip side of that, Rachel. Let's look at school readiness from a teacher's point of view. What do teachers think school readiness means?
Yeah, that's a really good flip on that question and a good perspective to think about. Kindergarten teachers often tell us that early childhood education, whether it's happening in a group setting or at home with parents or caregivers, should focus primarily on executive function and social emotional development, really as much as or even more than some of those concrete or discrete skills. Kindergarten teachers say that early childhood experiences should concentrate on fostering a sense of curiosity and real enthusiasm, engagement in learning, an ability to interact positively with peers, and to comfortably separate from the parents.
Yeah, those are big tasks. So put it all together, Rachel. What is school readiness?
Okay, well, altogether, school readiness is not just about what your child is able to do right now, and it is also not just about focusing on school performance in the future. It's really an integral part of your child's daily life experiences with learning and development. It's not a laundry list of extra things to accomplish during this phase of life, so don't worry. And this phase of life isn't just about preparing for the next phase. So the job of teachers and families is to be in the moment with children, with an eye on the future. School readiness qualities include having the skills, desire, and curiosity to learn and to keep learning. And the great thing is that cultivating these skills doesn't just lead to school readiness, but really long-term life readiness.
Great. Yeah, tell us more about that.
Okay, well, one way to look at school readiness is to ask the question, what will children need to succeed in the future?
Well, that's a great question. Let's talk about that one in chat. Think about this and give us an answer in the chat. What does your child need to succeed in the future? What does your child need to succeed in the future? Rachel, walk us through your answer to that question.
Well, a lot of what people are mentioning are certainly school readiness skills. A ready-for-school child interacts well with others, follows directions, effectively uses hands to manipulate small parts, has an inquisitive mind, a lot of different things. The ability to plan ahead and problem solve are also really important school readiness skills. Some of these skills and abilities describe what we call executive function, which is really critical. For example, when a child is considering multiple options for how to solve a problem and then they make a decision. Or when something happens, like their block tower falls over, and they try again with a different approach. These can be thought of as executive function skills. Executive function is an easy way to think about it. It's like the CEO of your brain. These skills continue to grow even into young adulthood and sometimes beyond that, but are an important component of school readiness.
So what are some key executive function skills that we can work on more that will lead to school readiness?
That's a good question. And before I dive in, let me just assure all of you that these are more things to add onto your already really long parent to-do list. Supporting executive function can easily happen in daily moments that are already part of your routines. So let's focus on a few key components of executive function. And as I share them with you, I think you'll see how important these skills are for children, but adults too. One of them that's very important is persistence, which is sticking to something. And looks a lot like that block tower scenario I just mentioned. It's hanging in there, trying and trying again, even if you fail the first, second, or third time. Self-regulation is very important. It's working towards controlling behavior and emotions, and many of us know this is a lifelong skill development and challenge. It's about delaying gratification and might look like maybe giving a friend a turn when you really want to keep riding that tricycle yourself, or waiting for a snack until you get home, even if you really want it now. Then critical thinking is about making judgments about information, and maybe it's choosing the right size paintbrush you need to complete your painting, or getting your dog dressed up for a make-believe outing and thinking about where you're going and the weather. And finally, intellectual curiosity. That's about pursuing knowledge, finding out how things work. And you probably can see clearly how important this is for children as they begin their school journey. It looks things like using a magnifying glass on a nature walk or taking apart a household item to see how it works.
So school readiness is more about how a child learns versus what a child knows?
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it. Although as executive function is developed, the what children learn will happen as well. Children certainly need to learn to begin to read and count and identify shapes and colors, but they will learn this all more readily if it's within context and not just isolated. Rather, so if they're learning it together in an activity when things come together, it's more meaningful than if they're just memorizing something or singing a song that repeats letters or numbers.
Okay. I think parents are getting it. There was a parent who said that one of their concerns was that their child wouldn't be able to control meltdowns on their own, and so these things definitely relate to that and to how a child learns. So let's look now at some ways that we can develop school readiness in both the classroom and at home. So let's start with the classroom. Rachel, there are some indicators that schools look at when they discuss school readiness. Is that right?
Yes, there's a National School Readiness Indicator Study that lists 5 key indicators for school readiness.
Okay, well, let's take a look at those.
Okay. So the 5 indicators are motor skill development, social and emotional interactions, cognition and general knowledge, approaches to learning, and language and literacy.
Okay, so let's take them one at a time because that's a lot of information to digest.
Sure, I'll describe each indicator, and then we'll look more closely at how we develop the indicator in a group or classroom setting.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. So as you are listening to Rachel's descriptions and the examples, think about your child and about where they are now and where there's room for growth. And so as we go through these, put that where they are now and where there's room for growth in the chat discussion.
Okay, so let's start with that motor development. A lot of times people don't associate motor development with school readiness, but it really is an important factor. Children should possess age-appropriate fine motor skills and large motor skills too. We want to think about coordination and balance and that really important hand-eye coordination. And that's important to do things like stacking blocks, putting together puzzles, connecting building toys like Legos, drawing, using a painting brush, or writing, all sorts of things. Early childhood classrooms should provide multiple opportunities that help children develop their large and fine motor skills.
Okay, so both large and fine motor skills we can work on. So in that chat box, remember, where's your child now and where is there room for growth there? The next indicator is social and emotional interaction.
Yeah, this is a big one. So children who interact positively with other children typically do well in a school setting. Positive interactions look like taking turns, listening to others, developing empathy, and being able to function as part of a group. What often looks like simple play to adults is actually very complex social and emotional interaction, where children are collaborating, sharing, communicating, taking each other's perspective. In the early childhood setting, teachers are providing opportunities for children to work out challenges through supported play. Teachers are really building the skills by helping children recognize and reflect on their emotions and perspectives through this play.
Okay, so this is a big one, and a big one in the chat for parents as well, to be able to have this social and emotional development. It's something that lots of people are saying. Crystal is saying her son really needs to learn how to take turns. It's hard as an only child. So being in groups helps with that. Taking turns even with things at home in the family would help with that. Is that right, Rachel?
Yeah, definitely. It's important to keep in mind that these are things to be ready for school, but they don't have to be accomplished by the time school is there. School really helps with a lot of these types of skills. So think of them as progressive, starting to work on taking turns within the family or play dates or even out in public in different situations will be helpful. And just know that they don't have to have these skills all figured out by the time they get to kindergarten. It's all progressive, and this is the foundation they'll build on.
Okay, that's great to hear. Tell us about approaches to learning. What does that mean?
Well, this is a good one, and approaches to learning is really about how a child learns. We hear a lot less about this in the public, but educators are thinking about this all the time. A lot of approaches to learning are components of executive function. And children who are ready for school are curious. They try multiple times. They are critical thinkers. They know when to ask for help. They have ability to follow through with directions. And this is really important, thinking about how a child might follow through on multi-step directions, things like get some crayons, then take them to the writing table, and have a seat. This is something you can easily work on with children, whether they're in a classroom or at home. Other aspects of this school readiness indicator are cooperativeness, persistence, which, as you know, goes back to that executive functioning, developing independence. Remember, it's developing, not being fully independent. Curiosity, creativity, and a real eagerness to learn and accomplish goals. A lot of educators point out that these skills are as valuable in something like a boardroom as they are in a classroom, and are really those life skills I was referring to earlier.
Yeah, those life skills. It's good to know. I think it's comforting to me to know that that you don't have to have it all figured out before you start school, and that it's going to be for the rest of your life that you're developing these, knowing when to ask for help and thinking critically and following through on directions. That's great.
Yeah, certainly. As you know, I said earlier that children learn these skills better when they're not in isolation. And here's an example. And I think parents, you can see this happening in your home life or in a classroom setting. So I was in a classroom the other day, and I saw a little boy using some Scotch tape. And he was just all by himself and trying to figure it out. So he took out a really long piece of tape and taped it from one shelf to another. Soon some peers joined in, and they worked together to complete this boy's idea. It was really fascinating to watch. They were collaborating, negotiating, problem solving, considering each other's perspectives, measuring, and so much more. All the good approaches to learning and social emotional development happening in one activity that was pretty spontaneous. The teacher could have solved some of the problems for them, but the adult in the situation did the best she could, the best thing she could do, and she prompted their thinking. She asked them some questions and reflected with them about how they could solve their own problems. Sometimes the tape pieces were too short. They ended up making a trap around this shelf area, and she really just helped them reflect and problem solve on their own. This was really meaningful learning.
What a fabulous story. That's great. So many opportunities to learn with so many of these different indicators in just one experience. That's fabulous. Tell us, Rachel, about cognitive and general knowledge as an indicator of school readiness.
So this one is about those cognitive skills that many people identified earlier and that often are identified with school readiness. And they are important, certainly. If you think of early learning as foundational, recognizing letters and knowing that letters are symbols for sounds is a key foundational part of learning to read. If children skip or rush through these foundational steps, the next steps aren't as achievable or meaningful. And there's really no need to rush development. Skipping foundational skills can impact a child later on. So just because a child could do something earlier doesn't necessarily mean they should or you should rush it or worry about it. One way that early childhood teachers help children start this foundational content or understanding that letters are symbols is to help connect words and meaning. So if a child draws a picture, a teacher often will dictate the child's description of that picture. You can do this at home, or you can reinforce it by reading the dictation and really learning what the child said about their own work.
I love those pictures with what the child said about the picture on there. It's just so clear that they were really thinking the whole time about what they were doing and what the picture is. It's a great way, and so I love that idea that families can reinforce it by reading the dictation, so that the child sees something that they said early is right there. It's preserved forever. That's a great way to make a connection. There were tons of questions during registration about this very topic of this cognitive and general learning, and it sounds like there's way more to cognition and general knowledge than simply memorizing ABCs and 1, 2, 3s.
Yeah, a good example is my youngest daughter. She sang the alphabet song, and she would just kind of skip through that elemental P part and run it all together. And what that just tells us is she's memorizing a song. She wasn't really learning letters. So the alphabet song is great, but there's real meaningful ways to learn this general knowledge and cognitive skills is more important.
Yeah, I think there are lots of kids who think elemental is a letter.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't really get the whole information. So there is one last indicator, and that's language development and literacy.
Language and literacy are really the foundation for all we do. This indicator is about the development of significant, what we call expressive or talking, and receptive or listening and understanding skills and vocabulary. It also means recognizing the relationship between letters and sounds, which is really the basis for reading. Yeah,
and lots of families believe that their children need to read before they go to kindergarten. Is that true? Do children need to be reading when they start kindergarten?
So this is one of the myths about school readiness. Kindergarten teachers do not expect children to know how to read. Some do, but they certainly don't have to. Children should enter kindergarten with a love of reading, the ability to make up their own stories, knowing that words have meanings, and really on their way to building rich vocabularies. And before we move on past these indicators, I'd just like to point out that these 5 indicators are not just about cognitive development, but about all areas of development. And that is what educators mean when they talk about whole child development.
Yeah, that these really do relate to every part of a child being ready for school. So remind us once again about what those indicators are. Just run through them one more time.
Sure. So again, thinking about whole child development, we want to focus on motor development, often talked about as physical development, focusing on that social and emotional development, regulating behaviors and emotions, and having good social interactions with peers, being able to separate from parents. It's a tricky one, but it's an important one to work on. Approaches to learning, that how to learn, the way a child absorbs information, seeks information, pursues learning. cognition and general knowledge, that's the stuff of learning, the how, the what you know and how you can apply it and how you can imagine using it. And then language development and literacy, how we read, write, talk, listen. Remember all those skills. Often we're focusing on reading development, but we certainly want to focus on children being able to express themselves and then understand others.
Yeah, Rachel, there's a couple of interesting questions about reading that just came in. So one parent says, Kathleen says, I'm curious how that works when your child knows how to read before kindergarten. I worry a bit that my child will be bored in kindergarten because she already reads very well. Are there lots of other things?
Yeah. So kindergarten teachers are typically very well equipped to deal with children at different levels of development. Often the child will be able to read, but have areas of opportunity and growth in other areas of development, and then another child won't be able to read, but maybe have really high-level social skills. So children come in all different school readiness shapes and sizes when they get to kindergarten, and that's the work of a kindergarten teacher. You certainly could talk to your kindergarten teacher about these concerns, but I think rest assured that this is pretty typical that children come in with different levels of reading capacity.
Just like they do with different levels of social and emotional development or motor development.
Exactly right. So again, we're sometimes thinking just about that cognition and general knowledge when we're thinking about school readiness, but a lot of times children are developing in one area and more proficient in another area, and that's okay. We want to work towards full development and whole child development, but as I said, it's foundational, what you're working on now. This stage of a child's life isn't just about preparing for the next stage, it's about really fulfilling the goals of early childhood, and that will get them ready for whatever learning and development comes next.
Okay. So I think it's hard sometimes as a parent to think about all of those indicators. We sort of get fixated on one or two of them. So let's take a look at the last part of our discussion today, which is, I think, really the heart of all of this, school readiness at home. And let's explore some activities that you can do with your child that will help them be ready for school, that will lead to growth in all of those areas. As you're listening to Rachel talk, keep thinking about what you wrote down in the chat about the areas of strength that your child has in those indicators and where there's still room for growth. And Rachel, as you talk about these activities, I remember you saying very early on today that families can work these activities into daily moments that are happening already. And I'm sure that sounds really good to families that are busy with, two working adults and, lots of activities with children. Life is busy. So if we can work these in, it will be great.
Yeah, I have personal experience from raising my own children and then helping lots and lots of parents in my career as an early childhood educator. And one of my favorite times to do early school development or skill development was just frankly waiting in lines or waiting in an office for something or waiting at a restaurant. So that's you're already doing those things. It's as simple as that, as weaving some new activities into those times. So I'm going to share some ideas and thoughts with you. They're really from my personal arsenal as a parent, but also what I've learned during the course of my career as an early childhood educator. First, easier said than done, I realized, but let your child be progressively independent. You don't necessarily have to helicopter your way through developing school readiness skills. A lot of it will happen on its own if you're just there to support and prompt skill development. Providing your child room to learn and grow and make mistakes and discoveries is really crucial to him or her being ready for school. This allows your child to start developing those important executive function abilities, and think of how easy it will be to weave those into the routines, just like waiting in line, like I mentioned. when you're getting ready for school, this is a good example. You could start with your preschooler thinking about letting them choose their own shoes for the day. You might want to give them a few options rather than the whole closet full, but letting them make some choices, and your job there is to help them think about the weather or what they're going to do for the day so they can use their critical thinking and make a judgment, make a decision. If they make an inappropriate choice, you can help them reflect on this choice and help them solve their own problem rather than doing it for them. Something as simple as this really helps children develop some of those executive function skills and that important independence.
So, Rachel, let's just take that specific example about a child choosing their shoes. So you ask the child to choose their shoes. Do you set up parameters around it, or do you just let them choose whatever they want and they put on their flip-flops for a rainy day? How do you...
Yeah, it's a good question. Different levels of comfort. Parents have different level of comfort with things like that. So if you're not comfortable with them choosing whatever they want, which might result in flip-flops on a rainy day, you could start with just two choices and ask them, what do you think the weather's going to be like? Why don't you go outside and feel what the weather is like, or look outside, and then let's make the choice together. That's a good place to start, and work your way towards why don't you pick the right shoes for the day. As a parent, in order to help your child be successful and make those mistakes, you might have to let them wear their polka dot rain boots on a really hot summer day, and they'll learn from that. They'll learn, okay, that didn't work. It's not harmful in any way. They probably think they look really snazzy, and the next time around they might make a different choice. But if they have you there fixing it for them all the time, they won't learn themselves how to fix those problems or adjust or make different decisions. Be real critical thinkers. It doesn't have to be shoes, but find something that you're comfortable with them choosing on their own and making a choice, and help them through that process. I bet if you try that, you'll see it can feel really successful, and you'll see your own child's growth and enthusiasm at their ability to do something on their own.
Yeah, that ability to make decisions is so critical, and we talked about it on a recent Bright Horizons webinar with Amy McCready when we talked about guiding your child and really helping them to make those choices. So that's in the resources you'll see a way to get a copy of the recording of that webinar where we talked to Amy about some real strategies that can help. I can tell you as a parent of adult children that helping my children learn to make decisions and being responsible for those decisions that they make is I feel like it's one of the best things I ever did for my children. Yeah,
I have a 16-year-old, and she came home the other day and told me she feels like she's pretty responsible compared to her friends because she had made a decision on her own and was reflecting back that I had encouraged her to make some decisions when she was really hoping I would do things for her. And she was reflecting that she had more capacity to do things for herself than some of her friends did. So it all turned out good in the end, although she really wanted my help at the front end. But
yeah.
Even at 16, she can start to see how helpful it is that she's able to have those skills.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting comment from Nancy N in the chat room. She says, my daughter is 3.5, and we've been using choices for about a year. She says, many less power struggles.
Yeah, it's just right. Great point. Yeah, it's choose your battles is a really important mantra for parents in early childhood, that it's not just about avoiding challenging behavior. It really is about helping a child become independent. And as much as sometimes we want them, going back to the shoe example, to wear the shoes that match the outfit, it's really the bigger gain is to let the child learn how to make those critical judgments for themselves.
Yeah, and I remember you saying too, Rachel, that this is a progressive skill. So the choices are about shoes today, but when they're 16, it's about going someplace that maybe friends want to go to, but they feel in their heart they really shouldn't. So it happens over life. It happens into adulthood. Heck.
Yeah,
all right,
certainly.
Talk a little bit about literacy then.
Okay. Literacy really is key. We can't emphasize how important it is. If you can't read and communicate with others and listen and understand information, you're going to have challenges in all areas of life. So literacy should be a part of your routine every day. Have real meaningful conversations, talk a lot, read the paper, read signs out loud, make stories together, have your child make a grocery list with you, whatever you can do to bring language and literacy into your lives. Maybe you're going to discuss something or even draw stories, whether it's an activity or you're just weaving it into those routines. Have a pad of paper and pens and pencils in your purse or your bag at all times if you can, and have that ready for your child. And provide your child with new and plentiful vocabulary. Don't shy away from big words. Help children learn the big words rather than change words for the children. My daughter's kindergarten teacher calls these type of words juicy words. And I've recently read some things about children's authors that talk about it's really important to give these words to children. Otherwise, they won't expand. They won't grow. They won't keep developing if we bring language down to them. So, of course, that's progressive like everything else, but building vocabulary is really important. Another note on language and literacy that's important to think about, and I know we have some infant and toddler parents on the call, literacy development really starts at birth. It sounds like an exaggeration, but developing strong language and literacy skills really does start with reading to babies and young children. Just getting them used to that receptive language, expressive, be animated in your storytelling, use different voices for characters. Truly, reading is just so important. And again, you want to aim for your children to go to kindergarten with a real love of reading. We hope they're choosing high-quality books, and we really recommend that parents look for high-quality and children's books, but ultimately the most important thing is that they're interacting with language.
Yeah, and in the resource pack that you can download with the green widget, there's a link to the Growing Readers website, the Bright Horizons Growing Readers website, and so there's some great suggestions for quality books for all ages of children, including self-readers. So lots of them. Just some fun comments from the chat. Sarah P says, I'm a list maker, so my girls are starting that habit. That's great. Sometimes it's hard to think that making lists is a part of literacy, but that's really true. That's exactly what literacy is. So making lists is great. Anytime if someone can translate what they hear into writing or reflecting back or hearing and then listening. And one thing about those lists, it's a great idea. I'm glad to hear your children are doing that. Be okay with invented spelling, or sometimes it's called phonics-based spelling. If children mix up the letters or they spell it how it sounds, or sometimes they write a couple letters of a word and then they run out of room and then they put the rest of the letters before the word originally. That's okay. That's them just figuring out the technicalities and logistics of writing. The real important part and the foundational piece is that they're hearing it and they're translating that into the written word. So that's great. You might get some silly looking lists and have to figure those out at the grocery store, but it's great. All right, Regina was asking again, where is that list of high-quality books? So in the resource pack, which is in the green widget at the bottom of your screen, you can just click on that. It will upload a resource pack, and in there is a link to the Bright Horizons Growing Reader website, and that will have a list of really high-quality books based on age. So books for infants, books for toddlers, preschoolers, kindergartners, kids that are reading on their own. So a really great list. Rachel, I just have to tell you this cute story about one of my granddaughters when she was like 3, would go to Home Depot with her father all the time, and one day they were apparently looking at lighting because the next time she came to my house, she had a very juicy word. As she walked in, she looked up at the ceiling and she said, "Grandma, I love your chandelier." And I thought, wow, chandelier, that's a good, juicy word. That is a good juicy word. Yeah. So, helping kids with vocabulary and making lists And reading, sitting down and having dedicated reading time is great, but these other things help as well. There is some discussion, and I don't know if you have an opinion about this, Rachel. There's some discussion in the chat about people asking about, does it need to be a book? Can it be on my iPad? Is there a difference there?
It's a good question, and the jury's a little bit still out on this one. Some early research indicates that children learn to read better when it's a paper book because multiple senses are engaged, and there's some tactile experience and a visual related to turning the page and the pictures on the page, whereas an e-reader, you don't have that tactical sense of where you are in a book, you're not touching pages, there's not a physical experience. So that, again, I'll say that's some early research, and if you have a choice, I'd make sure that you don't just use the e-readers. If you're going to use them both, make sure there's a lot of paper books in your child's life, but keep paying attention to the research. We're really in a new phase with e-readers and electronic media. But the tactical hands-on, the more you can get multiple senses working together at once is preferable in most cases. So it makes sense that it would be preferable in a reading scenario. Even if you think about other things on an electronic device, if you give a child just a bag of blocks and little toys that you bring to a restaurant and they have to build with that, that's much more meaningful learning than if they were doing a building game on an iPad because it's just flat, two-dimensional, there's not a real tactical experience or problem solving is involved as much.
Okay. All right. Okay, so reading is key, but there are other things we can do with our children to create kind of that learning culture at home, especially during those preschool and pre-kindergarten years. So Rachel's going to go over some activities, and in the chat, comment on the ones you're already doing or the ones you think you could easily do, because I think they're pretty easy activities. Rachel, tell us about some activities.
Sure. So at Bright Horizons, we have carefully crafted and curated a ton of learning at home activities. And we encourage parents to do these with their children. We don't think of them as assignments like what happens later on in school, but they're just opportunities and suggestions for parents to extend learning and enrich learning at home. So I'm going to share a couple ideas about preschoolers, but those of you with younger children, you can start working towards some of these things as well and adapt them. Again, thinking about that progressive learning, children can start doing a few of these things before their preschool age. A great thing to notice about these activities, and we do this very purposefully at Bright Horizons, is that they build multiple skills at once, so they're not just about one discrete skill at a time. So a couple of suggestions we have. First, we suggest something called a household sort, and all you need are items you'd find about your house. Think about different ways you can sort objects. A really good example is thinking about putting away laundry. You can do this with your child, and who among us doesn't want some help with the laundry, right? So ask your child to sort by light or dark colors, or maybe give them the socks and they try to match some white or colorful socks. Or even better, they could do that by family member. And you can be more and more complicated. You could start with light and dark colors and then ask for light or dark colors and by family member. Or think about maybe organizing something, art supply closet or drawer. Think about how the crayons could be sorted, for example. Maybe you want all the broken crayons in one bucket and whole crayons in another bucket, or you want wide or larger crayons in one drawer and skinnier crayons in another drawer. Length, color range, all the different kinds of blues together. That takes some real critical thinking to make some of those judgments. And so this kind of skill helps a child develop really early math skills, sequencing, sorting, classifying, and then definitely some critical thinking skills as well, some of that good executive function we need to work on. Another one,
great activity, and that's one that looks like it's fairly easy to weave into daily life. So that's right on.
Oh yeah, and get you some free laundry help too while you're at it, right? Yeah. Another one, and I know every parent that has young children has not escaped the challenge of waiting at a restaurant with nothing to do. You've gone through the famous coloring sheet, and now what? You're still waiting for food. we really would just recommend you have a little kit, a small box or a bag, and you put some special items in there that are only taken out at restaurants. Making that special has high value. You can include things like a calculator or magnets, special colored pens, or even felt tip pens, maybe something like that. A special book, stickers. Anything that might seem typical or everyday, but you put it in that special restaurant kit, and it becomes really important. And you can collect various items. You could use natural items, maybe some shells or things like that, pine cones, and then rotate different activities. You think about what's happening here, and there's just a whole lot of social skills, exploration, discovery, really focusing on approaches to learning development. And if you have read books and pens and paper, you're also getting some good writing development in.
Yeah. There's some other good ideas. Let's see, a couple of them that have come in. One is, let me see who it is, Jennifer M. Says her son works on counting numbers as they go up and down the staircase at their house. They have 20 stairs, and he gets a kick out of counting in different voices. So doing several different things there and understanding that each step has a different number, and that's a great one. And then Heather is talking about story cubes, a way to help create stories at a restaurant.
Story cubes is I think it won an award a couple of years ago for being the best new children's game, and it really can inspire a lot of creative thinking. I love the story counting too. That's fun. Yeah, and again, it's a way to get your child upstairs. Let's go upstairs. I don't want to go yet. Yeah, let's go count the stairs. It's you're doing two things at once. Right.
All right.
Exactly.
So that's a couple of ideas for learning at home with preschoolers. And I think as you start doing those things, like the household sort, and you can find other objects to do that same kind of thing with, and keep progressing and making the tasks harder. That's the takeaway that I'm going to take away from this, that it's progressive and that I can start with very simple things and make things more complex in any of those indicators. That's great. For children in pre-kindergarten or even children already in kindergarten, what are some things that you could do at home, Rachel?
Sure. So I'm going to recommend a couple activities here as well, and these are a little bit more complex. We call Story Surprise, and you take a familiar story, you get paper for drawing or writing, markers, crayons, pens, some sort of writing and drawing instruments. And to do this activity, what you do is you read the story about halfway through. Then you and your child make up a different ending to the story. Write it down, ask your child to illustrate it. A tip for this activity is young children may have trouble getting started with a new ending. They really like that predictability of familiar stories. So maybe you start with an example and use that funny voice you use while you're walking up the staircase or while you're reading other stories. And then your child might become more comfortable with it and start really realizing they can go anywhere. This kind of activity is great for creativity. It also builds perspective, empathy potentially, a connection between cause and effect, critical thinking, so a lot of executive function and social emotional skills on top of language and literacy development in that one. Another really good one is, again, it's not necessarily at a restaurant, although you can do it at a restaurant, but you can do it at home, is something we have titled Alphabet Menu. And as you prepare a meal, discuss what will be served and ask your child to create your menu for the night. They can fold a piece of paper in half or get a small piece of paper. You could use some fine motor skill development there with folding or cutting. Have your child create the menu by writing the word, or they might be using that invented spelling on one side of the paper and then drawing a picture of the food. You can do this for each food item on the menu, and you can even ask your child to present the menu to the family. Now, beware, I've done this with my younger daughter, and then we had menus every night for a while, which was fun, but we definitely had to take the time to do that. She really got into this one. This one promotes writing development, connecting symbols with meaning, visualization, spatial relationships, and even that fine motor skill development in the cutting and organizing the menu.
Yeah, those are great activities. Really fun. Fun for you to see the results and fun for the child to do. That's great.
Exactly.
So in a moment, Rachel's going to do some Q&A, but there's one more thing to prepare your child for school success, and that's to prepare yourself as parents. And so we have some additional resources that can help you with that. If you haven't already downloaded that green resource widget is down on the bottom there for the resource pack. And we've included in there some URLs to great sites that speak directly to preparing yourself as a parent for what happens when school starts or is about to start. So there's some really great resources there, and also a lot more learning at home activities. And they start with activities for infants and go all the way through kindergarten. So take a look at those resources and see what's there. There's something for all of you. So do it now, though, because this room closes at 1:30 sharp. So, and you'll also get in there a link to rewatch the webinar and to download the resources again in a couple of days. So I'd like to thank you so much for your participation today, but please remember Rachel's going to do a couple of Q&As for us. We'd like you to tell us what you thought of the webinar today. So there is a brief survey, and you can get to it by clicking on the widget from the menu. We really like to have your feedback about how this was for you, what you got out of it, what you're going to be able to use, and what kind of topics you'd like in the future. We really do listen to what you have to say. So while you're looking at that survey, I think we have a couple of minutes for some questions, Rachel. Are you good with that?
I'm ready.
All right. There was a lot of discussion about children with late birthdays. Should they be held back from kindergarten? Should you wait a year? What is the answer there, or is there an answer?
Yeah, this is a pretty common question. I actually was on vacation a couple of years ago, and someone found out that what I did for a living, and they found me in the vacation area, and this is the question they came to me with. So it's hot on people's mind. It's a really important thing to think about, and it's not an easy answer because it's different for every child. The thing to do as a parent is to consider all areas of development, so not just thinking about what they know, but really those social interactions and executive function, those are really key to think about. Really, it doesn't hurt them in most cases to hold back, so I'd say err on the side of safe. If you're really concerned about it, you can share your concerns with the future school, or even maybe you can find out who the potential kindergarten teacher might be and talk about it and really ask their thoughts about what a kindergarten-ready child would be, and make your decision with that a little bit more information and really reflecting on your child as a whole.
Okay, so lots of choices, but again, key to think about the whole child, as you called it. Yeah. Another one says, my child has never been in a school setting. What's the best way to help them adjust to that big group?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's not. You don't have to have your child in an early childhood setting to be successful, but there are a lot of natural things that happen in early childhood that you'll need to work on trying to replicate in your home setting, and you can easily do that. Really be purposeful about play dates, starting with one child at a time, and then increasing that. You don't want it to be overwhelming. Kids don't need to be able to interact in groups of 10 or 20 all the time, even in a kindergarten classroom. The teacher doesn't have them doing that. The teacher is splitting them up into small groups and independent types of activities or pairs. So don't worry so much about that. Just worry about a few children at a time. Family events are really important. Have your child spend time with a family member without you there. Make sure that you're maybe you go run errands and have your child interacting with another adult or some peers, or you do something that gives them some time to be independent without you right there to coach them through it. Thinking about making new friends, find some opportunities for that, so they have to get to know somebody. They have to learn how to enter into a play situation and negotiate and figure out somebody's perspective. The learning at home activities can be really helpful, and any type of activity you think about, try to incorporate multiple skill development happening at once. So you're not just, again, doing something like flashcards on letters, but you're talking about letters. Maybe you get a bunch of letter flashcards out in front of you and have children pull them together to make words, and then use those words in a story. So you're not just doing an isolated skill development, but you're doing multiple things at once. And something you can really do as a parent is thinking about encouraging your children. And that's a lot of what teachers are doing, is reflecting out what children are doing already and then prompting them to do the next thing. So those times that you tend to say, oh, good job, that's great, that's awesome, think about saying, I really like how you thought that through. Give them some concrete examples of what is a good job. Maybe you could think about this next. Maybe you could add this idea. So it's both encouraging them, reflecting on what they're doing well, and prompting them to the next step. And that's, if you're doing those things, if you're getting them in social situations and having them work on maybe even a little bit intimidating situations like meeting a new friend, you're doing activities that build multiple skills, and you as a parent are encouraging and prompting thinking, you're going to do a lot of the same things that are happening in the early childhood classroom.
All right. All right. We don't have time to address this question, Rachel, but there's a question that we should probably get to in some other format, and Krista B. will figure out how to do this. She says, if you guys can address pre-kindergarten twin school readiness in the Q&A, I'll love you forever. So we'll figure out how to get you an answer, Krista. There were several questions about twins at different stages of development. Rachel, I want to thank you so much for being here today to talk about school readiness. It was great. You fostered lots and lots of conversation and thought.
Great. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Great, great. Just looking ahead real quickly to the next Family Matters webinar, which will be in May, we're going to talk about the topic of raising socially responsible children and some projects that you can do as a family together. If you sign up, you'll be notified when registration opens a little bit early, so you can just go to brighthorizons.com/May webinar to get that process started early. And as an early person who registers, you get access to some exclusive content that will get you started on that journey to social responsibility with your child. I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining today. We really hope you learned a lot and that you can take home things and get started on them right away. We look forward to seeing you on the next Family Matters webinar, and the room will be open for just a couple more moments. We'll let you download those resources and give us some feedback on that survey. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. Bye for now.